welcome into another Green with Envy quick hit edition. Schedule dropped the other day, folks. Dropped yesterday, actually, as we're recording this. So we had to hop on here and give you some of our favorites. Joining me today to do all of that, my best friend, co-host, and coach of our podcast, one and only Greg Manakis. How you doing this morning?
I'm good, man. I'm trying to figure out how many road trips we're taking this year.
Yo, so that's going to be one of the questions that I wanted to get into. But if you're watching on YouTube, we're going to pull up the schedule here. We're going to kind of go through it. Let's just go through kind of month by month some things that maybe jump out to us. So first and foremost, we got this up on the screen here. We're looking at October. We have our opening night, Greg, October 25th at the New York Knicks, followed up 2 days later by the Miami Heat coming into Boston. So a really spicy, great job by the NBA, really spicy first week for Celtics fans out there. Of course, opening night at MSG. That's always got a special feel. Let's throw a little Kristaps Porzingis, hopefully, fingers crossed, into the mix here. That will spice things up a little bit. And then, of course, think back to 2 years ago. This was the first Ime Udoka's first game as a head coach. A classic in New York. Goes into overtime. I believe Jaylen Brown went off for about 46 points, really kind of announcing kind of here type game for him in that moment, even though the Celtics ended up falling in that one in overtime. But your initial thoughts opening up Madison Square Garden, following up with Jimmy Buckets coming into town.
I love it, man. I just think the Knicks over the past couple of years, although I don't root for the Knicks, I enjoy watching the Knicks. So I think Celtics Knicks opening night couldn't ask for anything more. We get together probably with our guy Matt Liptak. So I would imagine opening night we won't be watching from afar. We won't be doing any like post game reaction. We'll just be enjoying opening night, hanging out with our buddy, talking about Celtics Knicks and just talking shit, which is what I'm really excited for because we haven't had that, in a little bit
Well,
to
this is
get
the
back to just
thing.
watching in person.
This is the thing with the Knicks, right? And this goes for the Yankees in baseball, and this goes for the Jets or whoever else is your rival. Sports is so much better when your rival's good, and then you beat your rival. So I always feel
Mm-hmm.
like you almost need to root for your kind of not openly, but secretly root for your rival because then you want to be the one that takes them out. So anything
Yeah.
Boston, New York, it's better. It's more electric when those two teams are good. So you throw that into Madison Square Garden, and then, like I said, Kristaps Porzingis revenge game, maybe. I mean, I know he's been back there since. Obviously, that trade several years ago, but now when you add in the Boston, New York element, that elevates it to a whole other level. And then Miami. I mean, that's a game that I know there's going to be a lot read into that game. It's one game, but just early in the year, given the way obviously the Celtics season ended, that's going to be a game a lot of fans are going to have a lot of opinions on, even though it's the second game of the season.
Yeah, you hope Porzingis will be healthy for that, so we get a good feel for the adjustments that the Celtics will make, or potentially will make in a playoff series with them. But really, you just want to see the Celtics respond. Come out, compete, hopefully put a beat down on the Heat in that game, just to be like, you know what, like last year you got us, but it's going to be a different story this year. Hopefully we see Jaylen Brown go off in that game after he really, really struggled against the Heat. I would love to see Jaylen go for 35 or just maybe 25 and 5 with 0 turnovers. That would be nice.
I think the well-rounded game is the approach there, right? Especially coming off of that playoff run. All right, so let's keep it going here. Let's go into November. Now, November, Greg, November is kind of highlighted by this is when that mid-season tournament starts.
Mm-hmm.
And we haven't talked about it too much on the show here, but right here, basically, this 3 straight Friday nights: Brooklyn, Toronto, Orlando, the 10th, the 17th, the 24th, followed up by their final pool round game here, the 28th against Chicago. Those are some of the highlights for the month of November. But give me some of your thoughts on this midseason tournament. Now that you're seeing it in schedule form, and now you kind of have to adjust that, yes, it's a regular season game, but also it's a midseason tournament game. Do you
Well, I
get the
saw that the
excitement?
Celtics were favorites to win this midseason tournament.
Yeah, I saw that as well too. I don't really know how they figured that out. I guess based on the different groupings, but they're going to be one of the favorites to win the whole thing, so it shouldn't be that shocking.
Yeah, I just think it's important, even though, it's the first year of this and like players might not be 100% bought in. if they end up in Las Vegas and there's an electric atmosphere in Las Vegas when you're there. If you go to NBA Summer League, the stands are always full. I would love if the Celtics make it for us to go to Las Vegas if we can try to make it for that. But I think that anytime the Celtics can get big game experience and anytime this new group without Marcus Smart, with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown now hopefully as the vocal leaders in that locker room, leading by example, Kristaps Porzingis in the fold, I think that they need to build those reps, because the one thing that the Celtics had with Marcus Smart in the past was they had the continuity and they've been together for 5-6 years, that core group. So now that we're bringing in something new with Porzingis, I think they need to get those reps. They need to get those big game reps to make sure that Porzingis is ready in those moments and that the Jays are now ready to step up in the absence of Marcus Smart.
So here's one thought that I had last night after looking at the schedule a little bit and thinking about this midseason tournament. The one part that I think is going to be a little bit weird is, so if you look at the schedule, right, it's that Brooklyn, Toronto, Orlando on those Friday nights. But we also play Toronto at home. We play them away is the one that counts for the tournament. Home does not count. Brooklyn, it's the opposite. We play them at home. Away doesn't count. It's a little bit weird that you're playing those same teams at another time in that month within that tournament. And so think about, let's say at home against Brooklyn, Celtics win. Maybe at Brooklyn, we get killed. But that doesn't matter. That's not part of the tournament. And then, so I think to me, maybe, and I wonder if this is part of it, maybe this is something that they're thinking of, is, why not just put, if you're going to have four or other teams that you're playing, do a home and away with both. And if you really want to turn this into soccer style, make it like an aggregate score. Right. So between those two games, you have to not only either win both of those games, but win them by X amount. And because that's going to be the tiebreaker if if you split them. So I think that's going to be a little bit weird if there's different results in games that are so close to each other. And you got to kind of be like, well, that one counted for the tournament, this didn't. And then I think it does kind of hurt the legitimacy of the tournament when you're like, yeah, they got their ass kicked by Toronto, but it just wasn't the one. It was 4 days before the game that actually counted for the tournament. So I think that's going to be a little bit strange in real time.
Yeah, I never really thought about it that way. But I think it's just like any game that a coach is preparing for, a team is preparing for. You either are getting up for that game or you're not necessarily getting up for that game, because it's just another slog in the 82 games, right? So the more meaningful games that you can have, the more opportunities you're like really locked in on the game planning. I think that's just a better representation of how those teams would match up in a potential playoff series down the road. I think that's also something to consider there. But I hear your point for sure. I think, as the NBA continues to implement this, probably for the rest of the NBA history. Maybe this is just a small experiment. I'm sure they'll tinker with it over time.
Yeah, and then the last note in November, you mentioned it. You mentioned his name, I should say, Marcus Smart. That's the first time we'll have a chance to see Marcus Smart wearing a Grizzlies jersey at Memphis on November 19th. That's gonna stir some emotions, as we know, in Celtic Nation. So
9-hour drive, baby.
I know. I was saying we gotta that's a weekend game that potentially that might be on the docket for the boys to take a road trip. So that's one that we can mark. Heading to December, you see December 1st, another big game against Philadelphia at home. And then I'm really curious if there's just a week break if you're not in the in-season tournament. I'm still a little confused as to how that works, as far as, because it's supposed to, I know there'll be a couple games that get scheduled. So that will be interesting to see how that all works for that week in December, from the 4th to the 9th right now, which is blocked out because we don't know what that's going to look like with the in-season tournament. But then you see there's a pretty healthy homestand here for the Celtics around that Las Vegas trip. If they're not in Las Vegas, they have a pretty healthy homestand within here, including games against Golden State, Sacramento, the Clippers, and then the Lakers, of course, on December 25th. And then for us, Greg, this is the big one. Wemby, New Year's Eve, San Antonio. I think you and I need to start prepping the girls that there's a good chance that we're spending New Year's Eve in San Antonio.
Yeah, you texted me. You were like, New Year's Eve in San Antonio. And I was like, possibly. And it's 100% just because of the women in our lives, right? We want to make sure that we're doing right by them. But hopefully they understand the importance of that game. I think the hardest thing for me will be I'll be traveling back from, holidays. So what my schedule looks like there. I'm going to have to work that out with Danielle, because this is going to be actually the first time, if everything goes smoothly, that I'll be spending Christmas with her family. They rent out this like cabin in, I think, like North Carolina or South Carolina every year. So I'm going to
So
be
they live
spending a
in a
few days
cabin
with
and then
them.
they rent out a cabin?
Well, it's like a bigger cabin.
Okay, okay.
A cabin that can accommodate like 6 dogs and 14
Yeah,
people.
yeah, yeah.
So
No, I got you.
maybe cabin's the wrong word.
Little lake by the cabin. Nothing bad's ever happened there. But yeah, no, I think December will be a fun month. Obviously, with that LA Laker game on Christmas, that's always special, right?
Yeah.
Celtics Lakers 5 p.m. game, got that kind of middle game on Christmas. One thing to note here, just because I'm looking at the Warriors and the Lakers on this as well. When you look at national TV games, the Celtics are getting a lot of love when it comes to national TV, excluding NBA TV, or even if you include it, they're in that top four. Really, there's kind of a holy four group that it seems like the networks kind of looked at as their top marketing aspects, and that was Golden State with Steph, the Lakers with LeBron, of course, the Suns with KD and Booker, and then the Celtics. All of those teams have 25 plus national TV games. If you're going to include the, you know, bastard child NBA TV, it's about 40 games that are technically on national
Mhm.
television. So Celtics getting a lot of love from a national TV perspective. Let's head into the new year here. We go
Whew, that's a lot
January.
of games.
So this is where the season really starts to pick up and it starts hitting you really quickly here. So yeah, January is a very busy month. Chet Holmgren, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, and the Oklahoma City Thunder started off on the 2nd. Then you can see here Wemby makes his first appearance in Boston on the 17th. That's going to be a big one. Ime Udoka on the 13th of January will come back to Boston. Right before
That's an
that, to be
interesting
honest.
one, man. How do you
Is.
think the crowd is going to react to Ime?
I'm a little nervous, to be honest. I don't know because I feel like it's such a touchy topic that a lot of the conversations have, for me, been held
No pun
more
intended.
so. Yeah, yeah, good. Exactly. It's very difficult to make a comment one way or the other without there being a very obvious either punchline and or caveat to what you want to say about the situation. So how the crowd responds, I think that's going to be fascinating, and there's certainly going to be some interesting conversations that come up at that time. So I think that's something me, you, and Adam might need to do a little prep work for before we hop in and, and give and give our own take on it. But what do you think, or what are you thinking for that night?
I don't know, man. I would say that most people will probably boo if I had to guess, but the way that the players talk about Ime, like they still freaking love the guy.
Yeah,
So
I mean, you
I
saw
I don't
Tatum at Hall
know.
of Fame weekend, talking with Ime, and you hear about some of the other guys that like now that Embiid, things are kind of weird with the Sixers. What's the number one story you hear? Watch out for Houston. Embiid loved his time with Ime Udoka.
Yeah. So I think that if the players are saying stuff in the media leading up to that game, because I'm sure they're going to be getting a lot of questions about Ime's return, maybe they're going to be prepping the crowd in a way that allows Ime not to just get booed the entire game. Because
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that's fair for Ime to get booed the entire game. I'm not really sure how I feel about it. I would probably just stay quiet when they introduced him. That would probably be the best thing if just nobody responded in any sort of auditory way.
I mean,
You know,
I mean, I mean, I think booing is fine. I'm worried that booing is going to cross over into something else.
oh
Which
yeah,
you know what I
yeah,
mean? Because I think booing is fine. Because I think this dude, if you look back at our season, I mean, his whether or not you agree with how how the Celtics handled subsequently what happened, Ime made a horribly selfish decision that did have repercussions that we
yep.
saw end up all the way in the playoffs when we had half of our original coaching staff from what we thought the night before training camp.
Yeah, you
So
talked me into it. He deserves to get booed.
yeah, I think getting booed is for sure on the docket. Let's head to February here. There's a big day. So calms down here. The storm calms down here in February with some of those games. The big one being on a Sunday, Memphis Grizzlies in town, Marcus Smart, the tribute video, all of it that comes along with it. That's going to be a massive game. I've already seen people looking at. It's funny. Marcus Smart drives the resale market in Boston because I've seen people already trying to look at tickets, which aren't even really available. People gotta calm down with some of their tweets they're putting out about some of these tickets. But that's going to be a really interesting one. Any thoughts on how you're going to feel and or react to Marcus being back in the Garden, but in a different uniform? Because when it's at Memphis, it's a little bit different. But in the Garden, that's a whole different ball game.
I'll probably cry, to be honest with you. I think that with Marcus being back, one thing I was wondering is like, will we're talking about like betting. Like, would you bet the Marcus Smart overs or unders in that game? Like, is the emotion going to be too much for Marcus to actually be able to rise to the occasion and play well in Boston? Or like, would you bet the Marcus overs in the Memphis game? Because to me, I think like the Memphis game is I'll probably hammer Marcus Smart overs because I feel like he's going to be doing it for his crowd. It's not going to be quite as emotional with the TD Garden crowd like cheering for him every single time he touches the ball. That's what I imagine is anytime Marcus does anything, people are going to lose their shit in Boston. So that's my first question.
Until he goes for a loose ball and dives into Rob Williams' legs, and then it's going to flip really quick, right?
I know.
So that's going to be the part that's really crazy to watch. Yeah, I think that's interesting. I would imagine when it comes to him in Boston, having watched Marcus Smart for 9 years, that feels like a game where it's probably he's gonna press it a little bit too hard. I feel like that's a 1-for-13 game that potentially might be coming for Marcus Smart. Something maybe not quite to the extent of 1-for-13, but I feel like a rough shooting night is in the cards for Marcus Smart with maybe a few attempts at hero plays. But yeah, so for February, a lot of home games for the Celtics here. Obviously a break with the All-Star game in between here, but a relatively light, at least load management-wise, schedule for the Celtics in February. And then we head over to March here, and, very road-heavy in March right now is what we're looking at. Only 5 home games here going to be in March with a lot of games on the road. Something I wanted to point out to you, Greg, I know that you have a wedding coming up. I don't know when exactly, but I know you're going to have a bachelor party at some point at Phoenix on a weekend here, man. If we want to try to make it Friday to Sunday in Phoenix, just saying, that could be an option. A little bit of golf, we'll get a house with a pool, go check out KD and the boys. That's certainly something that I think, you tell me if that's appealing.
Yeah, I mean, I'd never really thought about Phoenix as an option, but I think that would be actually really cool. I don't know, like with dude, bachelor parties are a whole nother thing. But I think just going to Phoenix for that game, just in general, I think would be, a fun opportunity. I've never been to Phoenix. I've never been to Arizona, and seeing that new Suns team, I think that's going to be a heck of a matchup. Anytime you can get an NBA Finals preview, I'm in. So
Yeah.
let's talk about it the closer we get to it. But I think that's not a bad idea.
And then from there, they wrap up in April. Really nice homestand, basically, from, April 3rd all the way through the end of the season here. And ideally, if the Celtics are obviously going to be, as they should be, a top 4 seed, only have to travel one more time, which is to Milwaukee, the second to last week of the season. So schedule, on the back end does set up really nice once they get through a really tough March with a lot of road games. They'll be able to rest up and ideally be ready to go for the postseason. But Greg, schedule release, it really just means one thing. We're one step closer to being back to regular season basketball, and that's pretty damn exciting. Any final thoughts here before we wrap up?
No final thoughts. We're going to be kicking this to an interview that I did with my buddy down here in Austin, Texas. It's got a really cool business that I wanted to give him a platform to promote because I think it's just really cool. He's also a Cleveland Cavaliers fan. And, for those of you that are listening on the pod, there's probably about 5 to 7 minutes of LeBron James adulation. So just beware of that.
Was that a trigger warning?
Yeah, it was a trigger warning.
All right. You've been warned, but enjoy the conversation and enjoy this bonus episode, and we'll see y'all later this weekend. Take care, y'all.